Hi! So today in this video, I'm going to be talking about anything that has to deal with like subtraction or minusing or the difference or basically anything that has to do with this negative sign here. Now, I know that when I was beginning in math, it took me quite a long time to get a grasp on operations that have to deal with negatives. Like I would sometimes be confused when it came to like negative 12 plus 5 or negative 12 minus 5 or negative 12 plus negative 5 or negative 12 minus negative 5. Like stuff like this would really make my brain hurt. Anything that was different than the conventional like bigger number minus a smaller number to give you still a positive number. That kind of stuff really made it really was tricky in my mind. But there are a few tricks that can help us overcome that. This is specifically for when you don't have use with a calculator, like in our 950 class. So to get into it, let's say we have something like 5 minus 3. Now, we know intuitively that this is going to be 2. If we have 5 things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we take away 3 things, that leaves us with 2, right? And we know we can also demonstrate this on our number line. So here's 1, and then we subtract 3. So 1, 2, 3. So we landed at 2. So a few things to notice with that is that, whoops, 1 second. When we have a negative sign, we are moving to the left. We are moving away from, we're trying to go into the negatives, right? When we have a positive sign, we're moving to the right. So on conventional number lines, at least. Now, let's say we have something like 5 minus negative 3. What this is saying is we start at 5. And now this time, I didn't give myself enough room on my number line. 5, 6, 7, 8. Now this time what we're going to do is we aren't subtracting by 3 like we did before because there's this extra subtract sign, right? We're going to actually, we're minusing negative 3. So we're basically saying we're going the opposite of negative 3. One moment. So we're actually going to take these two that are right next to each other and turn them into a positive sign. So we have this and we have this. And it only works for the ones that are very close together like that. So for instance, we can take this and we see these two negatives and flip it. We have a positive now. So now we're going positive 3. We're 5 plus 3. So this basically turns it into a plus. Now we're at 8. So 5 minus 3 is 2. 5 minus negative 3 is 8. And so that when you see the two that are like that, like something minus a negative, those kind of cancel out and turn into a positive. When you have something like negative 5 plus 3, that's the very same thing as saying we start at negative 5 and we're adding 3. So we're going to the right. 1, 2, 3. Now we're at negative 2. What helps my brain is rearranging the problem. It wouldn't really necessarily help in this example for me, but one thing to keep note of with negatives and positives and stuff is that the signs are going to stay attached to whatever they're with. So this 5 will always have a negative attached to it, and this 3 will always have a positive attached to it when we are rearranging. So this is the exact same as 3 minus 5. In this case, it probably wouldn't help my brain as much, but we would start at 3 and go down 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes rearranging the problem is helpful to some people. It can be for me sometimes. If it doesn't make sense in your brain, you don't have to worry about that too much. So another thing that tends to confuse people is if we have 5 plus negative 3. Now we start at 5, and this plus sign tends to confuse people. We aren't adding 3, right? Because it's saying that would just be 5 plus 3 originally, right? We're actually adding the opposite of 3, negative 3. So we're going to be minusing. This add sign can be completely erased. We don't need it at all, and that can just leave us with 5 minus 3. So 1, 2, 3. So now that would leave us with 2. One thing that used to confuse me with this, if it would be like if I had something like negative 3 minus 5. What my brain would want to do when I saw something like this is to say, oh, look, we have 2 negatives again. We can turn these into positives. But that's not true. We're starting at negative 3, and we're minusing 5. We're subtracting 5, or we're going the opposite of 5. So actually, in this case, we would be going to negative 8. And I did one less bump than I needed. But we would be at negative 8 this time. We only can turn it into a positive when they're right next to each other. When they're right next to each other, when it's something like this, it's exactly the same as saying 5 plus 3, but we keep the negative. When we have 2 of the same signs together on our 2 terms, we can basically add them and keep the sign. That's the same for 3 plus 5. Both of these are positive, so that's 5 plus 3. Whoops. And that would be the same as 8. But since it has a positive, we keep this. If it was negative 5 plus negative 3, or negative 5 minus 3, which is the same type of phrase, that would give us negative 8. We're just keeping the sign, but we're adding. If you have something like, here, let me delete this. If you have something like 5 minus 3, 3 minus 5, negative 5 plus 3, you can see that there's going to be positive, positive. We have 2 different signs this time, one negative, one positive. What we can do is we can set this up as a subtract type operation. So 5 minus 3, that leaves us with 2. But we're going to keep the sign of the larger number. In this case, the larger number is a positive, so our final result would be a positive. In this case, our larger number is attached to a negative, and so it's going to be a negative 2. So you just want to keep track of which one has the highest, what the sign is of the highest number, and how many negatives and how many positives there are. Now let me disappear all these. I don't remember which layer that was on. Now, what if you have something like 5 minus 3 plus, well, let me write it closer to the number of 5 minus 3 minus 2. You can just go left to right. So what is 5 minus 3? Well, we start at 5, we go down 3, 1, 2, 3. We have 2 now, 2 minus 2, go down 2 more. That's going to equal 0. What if you have something like 5 plus 3 minus 4 plus 2 minus 1? Well then, we would take 5 plus 3, so 1, 2, 3. I like just taking it into parts. So 5 plus 3 is equal to 8. 8 minus 4, 8 minus 4 is equal to 4. 4 plus 2 is equal to 6. 6 minus 1 is equal to 5. Our final result would go back to 5. So, in case you didn't believe me, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1. Minus 1. Now, what if you have crazy big numbers, like 136 and 594? Let's say our first problem would be 594 minus 136. Well, this is fairly typical for what we might see. 594 minus 136. We set it up like this with the bigger number on top and the smaller number on the bottom. We recognize that there is one negative and one positive, so we're going to be minusing. 4 minus 6 doesn't quite work, so we need to take a little bit from this 9, give it over here. That leaves us with 8. 8 minus 3 is equal to 5. 5 minus 1 is equal to 4. So our answer here would be 458. Now what if you had something like, let me just get rid of this, negative 594 minus 136. Then we can recognize that we have two negatives for our two terms. So we'll take 594, 136, and we'll add them together, but we're going to keep these signs. So 4 plus 6 is 10. 10 plus 3 is 13. 5 plus 1 plus 1 is going to give you 7. And we keep our negative, so our answer will be negative 730 in this case. What if you have something like negative 594 plus 136? Well, we know that there's one negative and one positive, so we're going to be minusing. And we know that the bigger term is a negative, but we can still set it up as though we are minusing a positive from a negative, like in our original one. We just need to keep the sign of the larger term. So we'll take this again, give that. 14 minus 6 is 8. Yeah. And then 8 minus 3 is 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. So negative 594 plus 136 is going to give you negative 458. If you had something like positive 594 plus negative 136, we are going to basically be minusing, subtracting again. If you had something like 594 minus negative 136, we know that these two are hanging out together. They're chilling together. So we can turn these into plus signs. So we will just turn it into a plus sign, and we'll have 594 plus 136, and that will give you what, I don't even remember what it was. But hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, please let me know. I know that the trickier issues are maybe like 7 plus a negative something. That gets rid of the positive, or 7 minus negative something. That gets rid of both negatives in that case, or negative 7 minus 6 is going to, you're adding them together, which is going to give you 13, but you slap that negative sign on because they both have the negative. Those are all the rules that I like to think about when I'm adding or subtracting with negatives. Hopefully that made sense. I know this is a long video. I just wanted to make it very clear. So yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Have a good one.